Welcome to Patrick's Models and Transports. Oh, we begin the video with a photograph of a truck. It's a Kamaz truck, Kamaz K1, that I photographed in Romania. This is Romania, in Huedin. Probably this was December 2007. You can see cold, ice, snow, and there's a Dacia 1310 car parked behind it. Not a very common truck in Romania, the Kamaz. They were not exported to Romania in socialist times. Probably was imported second hand. It's got a Timișoara number plate, probably from neighbouring Hungary, or it might have even come in from neighbouring Ukraine or neighbouring Moldova, because of course Ukraine and Moldova were both Soviet socialist republics belonging to the Soviet Union. The Kamaz was one of the most common trucks. But the Kamaz trucks were also pretty common even in Hungary. I've actually seen quite a few. Anyway, but now let's go from transport to models. And why am I talking about Kamaz trucks? Because I just recently purchased, this was one of those impulse but reasoned purchases. I've been selling various surplus items, models and things of mine. I had more items, etc, etc. And so this Soviet toy, very nice model, but actually toy, was for sale on Vinted for, yes, a tenner, very cheap. And it's in absolute perfect condition. Of course, it hasn't got its box, and it's a Kamaz K1. And it's a beautiful model, mint. You can see at the front it says Kamaz, there you go, with the Kamaz, with a Cyrillic Z at the end, which is like a 3. And very nice with a white steering wheel. Maybe it's slightly too inclined towards the driver, but this is a toy, huh? Air intake, like this. The exhaust pipe for some reason is white. It doesn't stay, that wouldn't not have been white, one, and definitely it would not have stayed white had it been white. And the cab is metal. The platform at the back is plastic. That typical kind of, wow, I didn't know that opened. Oh, I thought that snapped off now. No, it actually has a hinged. Fantastic. I discovered that making a video right now. Wow. So even that's hinged. Beautiful. Fantastic. I didn't know that. I nearly thought it broke. That typical kind of plastic, of socialist countries plastic, that you also see on East German models and toys. And it's got suspension. Sprung suspension. Look. Like a dinky toy. Lovely. Beautiful. Okay, so the cab tilts, but right now I'm filming this with only one hand because I'm holding the phone with the other hand, and to tilt the cab I have to open this, pull back this plastic clip, and the easiest thing to do is to sort of use a lever and pull back the part here of the body at the back of the loading. And I don't want to risk doing that now with only one hand. I don't want to break things. But the cab tilts forward, and very realistically, when you tilt the cab forward, the gear lever, which is in there, you can see the gear lever, there's a hole, and the gear lever stays on top of the engine, so the transmission. So it's a very, very realistic cab when you tilt it. I have in the past, not nowadays, not anymore. I don't have the right driving license anymore because I had some health issues, and I'm not suitable for a truck and bus license anymore. I have a car license, albeit renewing it every 2 years, which is a bit of a pain in the whatever. But you also know that, yes, the car for me, I'm a petrol head. I'm a car person. I'm a vehicle person. I have vehicles of all types, but the car for me is very important. I've always enjoyed driving. So I also had truck and bus license for quite a long period, and so I've dealt with trucks, I've dealt with tilt cabs and all sorts of things. And the very first time I was sat in a truck, or lorry as we call them in British English, was when an old great uncle of mine who lived in Milton Keynes, north of London. He was actually from Yorkshire. He was my grandmother's brother-in-law, because my grandmother's youngest sister, my grandmother was from the borders in Scotland, from Dumfriesshire. My grandma's youngest sister, she had 3 sisters. My grandmother went to Glasgow because she married a Glasgow. My grandfather was from Glasgow. Our older sister stayed in a village in Eaglesfield, and she married a local man who was I've often mentioned him. He was my Uncle David, and he was a railwayman. He worked in the signal boxes, and he also had been in the airborne troops in the Second World War and fought at the Battle of Arnhem and was taken prisoner by the Germans. But we'll make a completely different video about that. Uncle Steve, instead, he was a truck mechanic. He worked in a truck heavy industrial vehicle garage, and he took me. He had an Austin Maxi at the time. He took me, and here I give a shout out to Railway 187 to Eric, because on his layout he's got a beautiful Austin Maxi, and I remember going in my great uncle's Austin Maxi, and he took me to see the trucks, and I think it was probably an ERF tilted the cab, and it's all Bedfords, all sorts of things. So anyway, back to the Kamaz. So this tilts, trust me, I'll show you in another video. The chassis is die cast, so there's nice weight. You can see that the cab is hinged and tilts forward as in the real thing. We have the Trelex wheels, which are very well depicted. As you can see, there's a Trelex spoked wheels, 5-spoke Trelex wheels. And we can see that even on the original truck, it has these 5-spoked Trelex wheels, which are actually very American, the 5 spokes. Generally, Italy was a big user of Trelex wheels with spoked hubs, but 5 spokes were usually for light and medium weight trucks, whereas the heavies, the Fiat 682, 690, 684, etc., always had 6 spokes. And a few words about Kamaz. Kamaz was set up in 1969 along the Kama River in Tatarstan in the Soviet Union in the Russian Soviet Federative Republic. So we're talking about Soviet Union, we're not talking about current affairs, hot matters that we don't want to mention certain countries, because you never know. There's a Romanian saying that says that once you've been scalded by soup on one occasion, you also blow in your yogurt. So I remember the video where I mentioned too many times the successors, the main successor state of the Soviet Union. So I don't want to repeat that experience. Okay. Anyway, the factory was inaugurated. They started building factory in 1969. The Kamaz K1, which is this model here, entered production in 1976, and it remained in production until, of course, I'm getting all my bits and pieces off Wikipedia, so you can until 2000. So the K1 was in production between 1976 and 2000. And it is a very, very distinctive and iconic vehicle with the corrugated iron for here sheet on the sleeper cab. This is a version of the sleeper cab, and very well. It's a simple model. It's not a model. This is more a toy than a model, but you can see that the drive shaft is just molded onto the die-cast chassis, and in here I have to sort of understand how the springs work. The springs are in there between the two elements of the chassis, everything seems to be clipped together. Yep, in fact here there's the model at the back. Well, let's go back to our picture so that there's no copyright problems. That's my own photograph. And here it says, under here, it says it's a Kamaz 53212 and 143 scale, made in the USSR. So there we go. You can see the details of the chassis. It's even got the radiator here at the front. So it's a very interesting model slash toy. I say that it's a highly detailed toy lorry that you could play with, but at the same time it's a collector. It has the details of the model. I mean, it's got the radiator there where it should be. It's got a working suspension like on a toy. There are many. It's simple but detailed at the same time, and it's a fascinating model. And for such a cheap price, it's the axles. These are very toy-like, because of course this has also got the toyness is in the fact that it's sprung. You can push it along the floor, you can play with it, you can do all sorts of things. But it's a really very, very nice model. I'm very pleased about this one here. So that's what I do. So maybe in time I've got other things, maybe models that, you know, from the newspaper shop, or things in other scales that you acquire in time, or other things, even other stuff, and I'm sort of selling those to buy either things for the railway, and occasionally I get something that's not related to I'm trying to standardize anyway, and these Eastern European models, these of the socialist period, fascinate me. So that's the story of the Kamaz. And there's a picture of the real thing in Romania on a very cold trip from Italy, Padova, to Curtea de Argeș in Romania in I think it must have been Christmas 2007, and that was very good, very nice. Nearly 20 years ago, and all that driving in winter conditions. I had a Fiat Uno, and the anti-ice salt corroded it to non-existence. It was pretty rotten by the time I scrapped it. I scrapped it because it had finished its second engine and there wasn't much tin work underneath, so I just decided, if I scrap a car, it means it's an absolute goner. Generally, I believe in repairing cars, not scrapping them. Okay, so cheerio, and see you next time. I don't know whether to zoom on a photograph or the model. Let's zoom on a model. But there's a photograph in the background. Cheerio, and see you next time.